Everyone from the waiting room has been admitted.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, good evening. I'm calling this public hearing to order at 6 p.m. in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40, and the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4. The Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public meeting this evening, which is May 3rd, 2023, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the Commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. This evening's public hearing will be followed by our regular meeting. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online to ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission. The public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions, and public comment on applications and discuss. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and then *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag ConComHearing. Let's see, for the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Before I go to the rest of the commissioners, just want to say a few things, a little bit of housekeeping. Anybody who's here for 98 Taylor Street, that matter is being continued at the request of the applicant. So again, that's 98 Taylor Street. Also continued is the Emerald Tutu, which is going to be staged over at the water sheet near Piers Park in East Boston. So we'll be hearing neither of those two hearings tonight. One other quick thing I wanted to mention is my colleague, Commissioner Ann Herbst, environmental planner who just retired from the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission Council, was a presenter for a great seminar this afternoon called Water, Water Everywhere. And for anybody who's interested, dealt a lot with flood issues and flood insurance claims and policies going forward. I would suggest, and I assume that the presentation will be posted on the MAPC website for people to access it.
That's right.
Yep, so a little plug for that. So again, I'm Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission, and now I'm going to call the roll. Who's here on behalf of staff?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Christopher Edwards with the Environment Department.
Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan.
John Sullivan.
Commissioner Long.
Nick Long.
Commissioner Richmond.
Alice Richmond.
Commissioner Herbst.
Ann Herbst.
Great, thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda this evening is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061928 and Boston file number 2023-018 from Horsley Witten Group, Inc. on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation for the proposed remodeling of the former Doyle Playground on River Street in Hyde Park. Resource areas are bordering land subject to flooding, riverfront area, waterfront area. This is continued from the April 15th, 2023 hearing. Who's here on behalf of the proponent tonight?
Hi, good evening. Amy Ball, the senior ecologist with the Horsley Witten Group, along with my colleague, Brian Kuchar, and our landscape architects, Kate Kennan and Will Smith, who are here from Offshoots.
Fantastic.
The members of DCR were unable to join us this evening, so
okay.
We're here for them.
And as I understand this, you're coming to our next hearing regarding the surface materials going to be used. You've had a change in plans there, and tonight we're going to, you want some brief feedback on the supplemental letter that you sent on April 28th regarding the helical piles, the beaver issue that Commissioner Long brought up, the vegetation management plan that I think it might have been Commissioner Long or Commissioner Wilson had an interest in last time, dealing with some another invasive species, ticks, and for Commissioner Sullivan, the proposed stormwater management system. Is that right?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, let's focus on those and we can give you some feedback.
Okay, so you sort of covered it in a nutshell, and our letter that we submitted about a week ago was really kind of covers two basic things: the landscape design, based upon the conversation that we had with the commission in April, and also some comments on the stormwater. So I guess I'll just tick them off one at a time. No pun intended on that tick.
Okay.
Beaver and animal herbivory, we had noted that there is some, or had been advised that there's some, additional beaver herbivory along the Neponset River. And based upon what we came up with DCR, with the project team, we believe that the best avenue for the initial assessment of this would be to keep an eye, to monitor any of the new plantings once they go in during the establishment period. And then if there is a concern about a herbivory, be it beavers or other species, then we think we'd like to come back to the commission with a plan to take measures. We had initially thought about maybe doing an enclosure fencing around the whole area, and then thought there might be some concerns about cutting off the river and the wildlife habitat from for any species that are migrating in along the river there. So that was I don't know whether we want to just touch upon these each quickly and then go back to questions or discuss them intermittently.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Why don't we go to Commissioner Long? This is his issue. Let's get his feedback for you.
Yeah, well, during the plant establishment period, I assume that staff will be there nearly every day. It'll be an active construction at that point. Is that correct, Amy or Kate?
Yes, this is Kate from Offshoots. There's a 1-year establishment and warranty period by the contractor. So we're also going to be monitoring it as well.
And is herbivory covered under the plant warranty?
That's a great question. It usually is not, it would be because that's an act of God, but if DCR is held to do it, they would have to do a change order for any sort of additional material that would come in. So it could be a condition that there needs to be a certain percentage of the material or whatever that is. Usually I would say that herbivory probably isn't covered by the warranty because it's not the contractor's fault, right?
Right. So given that people are going to be there very frequently, and I'm noting your concerns about fencing off a larger area, I think it makes what you're saying makes sense to me. But I would add that you don't necessarily need to fence off a whole area. What I've seen in the past is the metal fencing or chicken wire around the trunks of individual trees. I know DCR may present some concerns with like maintenance or watering if that were the case. But I'm pretty confident that people will be present on site during the establishment period.
It sounds great because what I was concerned about was introducing that much metal with the sort of, 100 and almost 200 trees that are proposed coming in and a lot of small saplings. It just seems like a lot of fencing around. So I think we monitor, we're really careful that we get through establishment and then we'll, ensure that the plants have success.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah. And I would add to pay special attention to those populous species.
Agreed. I know they love them.
So
I agree.
Yeah, I think you did address my concerns. So I appreciate that, Kate and Amy.
Great. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So let's go to the helical piles. One thing I'll say on that, just to maybe short circuit this discussion is if you have to go to alternative piles here, I think that you said you would let staff know. I guess you said you would notify the commission in the case that you would have to use an alternative pile, e.g. concrete footings. We would probably, or not, I'm not going to say probably, we would want more notice in that. We'd want to know the alteration, the differences in alteration, what you're proposing to use. And staff would have to review and approve that or decide if it, and I doubt this would happen, but if it was a material change that had to come back in front of the commission, we would want to see it.
Yeah, we're hoping
Makes
that
sense.
again, that we can just use the helical piles and it all works out. So,
Okay. Okay, great. Maybe we can go to the invasive vegetation management plan then.
Okay, so I think really what we provided the commission with here were, there was some discussion about the use of herbicides. And there are two primary sort of commercially available herbicides that we'd propose to use based upon the plants that are out there. Those are Rodeo and Garlon. Rodeo is a glyphosate with a, it's a tackifier that is for use around water or waterside applications. And the same with this Garlon 3A. So those were the two things. We submitted the MSDS sheets on them for the commission's records. And Kate, I don't know if there's any additional.
sure, we had
thoughts you have
submitted a
there?
sure, we had, as part of the NOI package, we submitted a detailed vegetation management plan of how we would actually target each invasive species. So we would like to use that as the guide, knowing that we'll only use herbicides when we absolutely have to, as noted in that plan. And that plan very closely follows what DCR had proposed for the Charles River Vegetation Management Plan. So it really kind of closely aligns with that. So I know that that's something that the commission has looked at before. And the idea is we use the same sort of best management practices there. Really try to focus on manual as much as we can. And then when we have to, we will use herbicides really predominantly in a cut and dab. But if we had to do a foliar spray, say of a poison ivy, that we would be done by a licensed pesticide applicator with, you know, in the right kind of time frame and best management practices.
Okay, fantastic. I guess Commissioner Long, I'm going to go back to you. Your reaction.
Yeah, it all makes sense to me. And I apologize because I didn't actually look at this specific species. I know there's Ailanthus on site. Is that correct, Kate?
Mhm.
So
It is, and the Ailanthus is going to all completely come down. So that would be a cut and dab scenario.
would you be open to potentially for any trees that wouldn't present a hazard near a public way, a basal bark treatment for the Ailanthus? I'm concerned about resprouting with the cut.
Yeah, and I think that what is in the CRVMP, and I'd have to go back and look. I can look at Ailanthus specifically before the next meeting, but I think it's a cut and a paint. The herbicide directly on the cut so that you have the systemic down to the root system. So I believe that's what we've been looking at.
Okay, I would just I'm an applicator myself,
Oh, great.
and I've noticed in past cut and dab treatments, Ailanthus, resprouts like crazy.
Okay,
Even if
that's
you-
great. That's
Yeah.
great feedback, Nick. So if there's any other specific feedback, just let us know. But I'll look into that. And so
Okay,
you had mentioned basil. Say that again so that I can exactly write that down.
yeah, basal bark treatment,
Okay.
BAFAL.
Okay, yep.
All right, and yeah, so if you would look into that and we could maybe touch on it next time, that'd be great.
Sounds good.
All right, that's it.
Great. Thank you. You're making us all look good. Okay, let's go to ticks.
Okay.
Commissioner Richmond, this was your issue. Amy, do you want to go through it, or Kate?
Sure, I can go through it quickly unless Kate wants to, but there had been some concern about introducing another, tick habitat with the taller grasses. And so what the intent here is to keep all of the paths with a 3-foot wide Lomo strip around them, as well as this a Lomo strip between the open areas and this taller grass. There is the tall grass is not the only tick habitat that is potentially out there. Of course, they will also inhabit forested areas. So the only other thing we thought we could do in terms of user awareness is to incorporate some tick awareness or signage within like the kiosk at the front of the park there.
Okay, this is Alice Richmond, and
Mhm.
I was going to suggest that if, as a kind of last resort, that some kind of a notice to people that, that they needed to, that there were ticks and that they needed to pay attention to it. Because I think people in urban areas either don't know much about it unless they have dogs, or think, well, we're in the urban area and that we're not at the beach and we're not in the woods, so they're not here. So I think some kind of signage, some sort of information that they need to be aware of, somewhere, where you have the rest of the information would be great. I love the fact that you're going to try to keep that distance between the paths and the taller grass. I think that's important.
Okay, great. Let's get to the stormwater management system.
Okay, and this is where I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Brian.
Okay,
Thanks, Amy. For the record, Brian Kuchar from the Horsey Witten Group, registered landscape architect and professional engineer. So we included in our response letter some of the volumes and the velocities that Commissioner Sullivan had requested and what it demonstrates. And I'll go through and explain this a little bit. Due to the site's location and the grading or the topography of the abutting properties, we do have on-site runoff from our abutting neighbors that we have to account for as well when we're looking at the stormwater design. So what we did is we provided the square footage for the on-site impervious cover, which would be the pathway, and then the off-site. So when you look at those two numbers, it's about an equal split, about 7,000 square feet for the pathway, and then another 7,500 for the off-site runoff. And then when we looked at our 1-inch volume for the entire area, you can see in the chart that based upon what we're infiltrating on site, we're getting about 75% of that 1-inch volume. Now, one point of clarification that I want to make sure everyone understands is that the volumes that I provided for infiltration take into account infiltration itself. It's not the surface storage volume of the particular practices, but it includes the infiltration rate of the subsoils based upon the site soil analysis. If we looked at just straight volume calculations, the numbers, as you would imagine, would be quite smaller. And the way those numbers play out, we have about 310 cubic feet of storage within our water quality swale. And for the area that's actually draining to that from our pathway, we provide more than the 1-inch volume. But if you look at it as a composite for the entire site, it's just about half that number. So it's about 6 inches of that volume. So we are providing infiltration on site. It's not the 1-inch volume that Commissioner Sullivan was asking about, but it is half. And as far as the velocities, we also looked at where we're discharging at the level spreader because there was concerns about erosion, and we provided those numbers. And if you look at both the average and the maximum velocities, they're pretty low numbers, not super concerned about erosion. Having said that, that means we probably should be providing some level of stabilization in the area where the water will be overflowing. So that summarizes what we were asked to present. Before I open it up to comment and discussion, I also just want to point out that we've discussed as a team the overall stormwater strategy following the meeting and taking into consideration some of the comments we heard and the thoughts that potential or possibly we could do better. In our discussions with DCR, we've agreed to change the pathway to a porous material, to a porous surface, thereby providing more infiltration, in particular for the smaller storm events, and reducing the amount of runoff. And also we were going to look at some minor grade adjustments to address some of the erosion concerns that were raised by some of the commissioners as well. So we think between those two things and the volumes and velocities presented tonight, we've addressed the comments, and we would anticipate submitting a revised plan set in advance of the May 17th hearing that would reflect the changes that I just described.
Great, thank you, understood. Before I go to Commissioner Sullivan, as a reminder to members of the public, to provide public comment, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and mute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro using the hashtag CONCOM hearing. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan, could you provide some feedback for the applicant here?
Yeah, I'm fine with the velocities. That's what I was looking for. It would be nice if you kind of put a heading on the table. So if somebody were to read this later, they'd know what the hell that table was for and where it was reacting. I would suggest you do include some kind of erosion control right below it, mainly for the 25 and 100-year storm. Those aren't excessive velocities, but since you're out there playing around, you can put something down to, slow it down. As far as the, when you revise the letter, if you could show both the permeable paving, which is a really good idea to do that. And I would agree with those other numbers, given the site constraints and everything else, I won't have a problem with it. But he could also show a cross section of the permeable pavement and what is the base underneath it when you submit the new plans. So we can take a look at that in total.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. We would definitely show we'd have to add a detail to our plan set, and we'll be updating and revising the stormwater report. And I plan on including the tables, and I'll update these tables as they to reflect the change to porous pavement. But I'll show these volumes once again, and I'll make sure that's clear that the velocities, and I'll provide a table heading. But that'll all be included in the updated drainage report.
Yeah, and then make sure we have that nice map you sent me this afternoon. So
just for clarification, that was in the original stormwater report we submitted, but we'll make sure that if there's any changes, I don't anticipate there will be, but if there are, we'll make sure that's updated as well. And again, we appreciate all the comments and feedback. This has been very helpful.
Yep. Great. All right.
Okay. So I think we've been able to give you some good feedback. Last piece of feedback here is regarding the standard special conditions. We're not going to negotiate those tonight, and most likely not at a public hearing in the future. So I would ask that you continue, if you haven't done so already, work with staff to get those issues ironed out before you come back. And as last time I volunteered my time, I will certainly review anything that Elena has for me or has for the commission if there's an issue. So with that, Elena, do we have any hands up?
I don't see any hands up, and we also haven't received any emails or other methods of public comment since the last hearing.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. It carries 5-0. Okay, thank you. See you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Good night.
Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061937 and Boston file number 2023-026 from Epsilon Associates on behalf of 22 Dry Dock LLC for the proposed demolition of structures and removal and replacement of subsurface utilities at 22 Dry Dock Ave in South Boston. Resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Good evening, Chairman Parker, Eric Rexford from Epsilon Associates on behalf of the applicant, 22 Dry Dock LLC. Joining me this evening is Craig Wood from Related Beal, the applicant's representative for this project, and Chris Hodney, consulting engineer from Netch Engineering.
Okay, just as a housekeeping matter here, I actually was on the BCDC meeting last night, and surprising hearing for a few reasons, and Craig probably understands why, and I don't need to get into it. One thing I did notice was a lot of talk, and I know you're coming to us in an NOI in probably several months for the building itself. This has nothing to do with tonight, but there was a lot of talk about the landscaping plan. And so my suggestion and my offer to the project team is to submit your landscaping plan fairly soon, or when you start to get direction, so that we're not just your last stop and there are miscommunications as to what we want vis-a-vis planting or configuration and things like that. So that when you come to us with the entire NOI package, that you're going to have some certainty on the landscaping plan, and that's not unprecedented. We've done that with Suffolk Downs as well, and it's just to sort of smooth the way later, so that there's no last-minute wrench in anyone's plans. So with that, Eric, I'll if you want to proceed.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate that feedback, and we'll certainly reach out with the landscape plan as we get a bit closer. Thank you. So project site is at 22 Dry Dock Avenue. It's the future development parcel is shown in the yellow boundary. Northern Avenue is to the north of site, Dry Dock Avenue to the south, and Tide Street to the east. Can you go to the next slide, please? For the purposes of this notice of intent, we're respectfully requesting an order of conditions for site enabling work. That enabling work consists of two components. One being the replacement of subsurface utilities, specifically electrical duct bank along Dry Dock Avenue, as shown in the yellow, and a short segment on Tide Street as well. And the replacement of a storm drain in Northern Avenue, that's shown in the blue shaded area. The second component of the site enabling work is site demolition, removal of the existing structures and appurtenances at the project site. That's shown in the purple shaded area. The entire site is within the South Boston designated port area, so DPA resource area. And land subject to coastal storm flowage. If you can go to the next slide, please. These are the limits of work for those two different elements of the enabling work. I'm sorry to say it's a bit hard to see on this image, but that blue hazy shaded area is the land subject to coastal storm flowage from the most recent FEMA flood insurance rate map. So all work will occur within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And of course, entirely within DPA. Next slide, please. Site plan. This is from the PNF, and I'm sure this is what you saw last night, Chair. Just to give you a sense of the future development, this is what will be the subject of a separate notice of intent, but we'll more than happy to coordinate that site plan, landscape plan with the commission as we get closer to that filing. Next slide, please. Just a render of the future development taken from essentially the plaza in front of IDB looking northeast, the EDIC garage. You can just see on the left of the image. Next slide, please. So like I said, subsurface utility replacement. This is the storm drain replacement in Northern Avenue. The engineer plan drawing is at the top of the screen. The bottom is just the alignment of that utility over an aerial image to give you a sense of what is where. Obviously connecting to existing services, but there are 4 new drain manhole positions proposed. They're sort of in the middle of the alignment where there's that slight bend in an otherwise linear feature. Next slide, please. The next slide should show, electrical duct bank to be installed in Dry Dock Avenue and Tide Street. In total, it's about 1,800 linear feet of duct bank. At the westerly end, it connects to existing service south of Dry Dock and continues up onto the project site, where a new utility pole will be installed as part of this enabling work. In addition to the duct bank, there are electrical manholes, there are 4 in total that are proposed to be installed. They're represented by the rectangular boxes. So one just south of the project site, the other one at the intersection of Tide and Dry Dock. Next slide, please. Just more duct bank. It's a long stretch of duct bank. This is little bit further east on Dry Dock, another electrical manhole proposed in that position. Next slide, please. It should be the terminus on, another electrical manhole, and then the terminus of the duct bank at 24 Dry Dock Avenue. Next slide, please. This is the Tide Street duct bank, and I apologize, the orientation of this figure is shifted. North is now to the left. But the duct bank will continue from the intersection with Dry Dock up to an existing Eversource manhole. Next slide, please. This is the building addressed at 20 Dry Dock, single-story brick building to be demolished. Next slide, please.
Eric, how big is that building?
I can look it up for you. I don't know the square footage off the top of my head. Craig, do you or Chris know?
The 22 Dry Dock building is about 30,000 feet, and the 20 Dry Dock building is about 20,000 feet. Just rough round numbers.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Thanks. So 22 Dry Dock building here, 3-story brick building. Both structures are vacant at this time. There is some vegetation on site. There's some primarily street trees. You see them in this image and in the previous as well. But mostly the site's impervious surface, all to be removed. Next slide, I believe, is the demolition plan. There's a lot going on here. I apologize for that. The dark black outline is the footprint of the future development building, just for reference purposes. This shows otherwise everything to be demolished, including the 20 and 22 Dry Dock Avenue structures, subsurface utilities that will also be capped, cut and capped in the adjacent rights of way. I mentioned there is some vegetation on site, primarily the street trees. There's a couple on Northern Avenue, around the corner on the Tide Street, and along Dry Dock Avenue. Those will be removed as part of this enabling work as a temporary interim condition until the redevelopment project is before the commission with a comprehensive landscape and site plan. A few trees at the southeast corner, which is the bottom left-hand corner of the site, will be maintained and protected during the enabling phase. Next slide, please. Sorry, this orientation got stretched a little bit. Limit of work is the dark dashed line around the project site. Inside that limit of work, construction fencing will be installed. And on the work side of that construction fencing, erosion control barrier will be installed around the entire perimeter of the site. And a stabilized construction entrance will be established at Dry Dock Avenue. That's that sort of gray rectangular feature at the bottom left. Next slide, please. The construction entrance I described, there's detailed drawing of it on the left, intended to keep material and debris from migrating off site. Sediment control, erosion control barriers, the 4 detailed drawings at the top right, that is the polypropylene fencing that will be installed inside of the construction fence, staked 6 to 8 feet on center. There will be a filter fabric at its foot and straw wattles staked as well. Down gradient BMPs will be protected with a silt sack or a comparable product. For the trees, could be fencing around those trees to be protected, and or trunk armoring, just to make sure those trees are protected during the enabling phase. Next slide, please. For the subsurface utility work, it'll mostly be conducted in small work areas. Dry Dock Avenue has to remain open throughout this phase of the project. So obviously exposed trenches, those would be plated during non-work hours, off-work hours, so vehicles can maintain use of Dry Dock Avenue, Northern Avenue, and Tide Street. Once backfilled, the trenches will be patched. Street sweeping and other housekeeping will be done on a daily basis just to minimize fugitive dust and transfer of sediment material outside of the limit of work. Rubber tire vehicles will be used for all work in the streets, and no material will be stored inside the floodplain. So pretty much everything's going off-site as it's excavated. Clean material will be brought on site for backfill and bedding as necessary. And the applicant anticipates filing a notice of intent for coverage under NIPD's construction general permit. With that, turn it back over to the commission. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Before I go to the commission, just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6, unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag ConcomHearing. Elena, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan, what do you have on this?
Just a little quick question. Were those plans, the electric plans, reviewed by the water and sewer? You know?
No, this is Chris Sadi with Mitch. No, so we had sent you the storm drain and the demo plans, but I don't think we sent you the electric plans.
Yeah, I know usually Eversource has to send them independently. I'm not sure how that's being done. Those manholes are too close, or at least the way they show in the thing, to the sewer. They're encroaching easement. So that could be a problem, not necessarily a Concom problem, but a problem out there in the future. You might want to check that out, Chris.
Which manholes in particular? We'll definitely take a look at that.
The ones that would prohibit us from opening up and repairing sewers. So anytime you get a manhole, a lot of your manholes are uptight. We don't need to go over it now. If you could just kind of follow up on that tomorrow. There's a way you can shift them over and bring those lines in. So that's just a comment. Other than that, it's straightforward work.
Yep.
No other comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
No questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Commissioner Herbst?
I may have missed it. What will you, once you've done demolition, what will the surface be in this period before you start new construction?
That is being determined internally. It will be depending on what the material is, that the erosion control will remain in place. I don't know if Chris or Craig have any updates on interim surface condition.
No, there won't be a interim surface condition for very long either. The plan is to go for the full NOI prior to the completion of the demolition. So the interim condition should really be momentary, if you will. If there is some kind of interim condition that seems like it's going to be an extended period, we'll come back to the commission to talk about what that interim condition will actually look like.
Okay, so if it's the interim condition you imagine, you'll rely on your erosion control, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
It will essentially go straight to construction period.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I don't have anything. Elena, any raised hands?
I don't see, let's see, we didn't get any emails and I am not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, thank you. And I guess we'll be seeing you shortly in a few months.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay, next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061938 in Boston, file number 2023-027 from Niche Engineering on behalf of the Fallon Company for the proposed residential condominium development and subsequent landscaping and stormwater improvements located at 1 Harbor Shore Drive in South Boston. Resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, waterfront area, and 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening, John Schmidt with Niche Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the proponent, and also with me is Lydia Deneen from the Fallon Company and Skip Burke from Richard Burke Associates. I think Lydia, if you want to take the lead.
Yep, I'll open it up for us here. So good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the time. So Lydia Deneen with the Fallon Company here on behalf of ownership. If we could advance to the first slide. We should also have joining us tonight, Joe Pucci at CBT Architects, who's our building architect, and John just mentioned, landscape architect, Richard Burke Architects is here, and John from Niche Engineering. So this is the final building at Fan Pier, 1 Harbor Shore Drive, Fan Pier Parcel H. If we could advance to the next slide. This is a 21-acre site, all of Fan Pier, that we've been developing since the mid 2000s. Today, the image on the right is what's there today, and this site is just next to Fan Pier Public Green, which is the green space you see right there in the middle of the site. So this building, just a bit of background. So Parcel H, it'll be a residential condo building, approximately 245,000 square feet. There's a significant civic and cultural space on the first and second floor, about 23,000 square feet, and then retail along the harbor side. It's important to note here that the below grade garage and the building foundation are actually in place, completed in 2016. So the garage is fully functional today, and that work was completed with the abutting building, 100 Northern Ave. So only above grade work here. If we advance to the next slide. Just a look at the overall Fan Pier public realm. We hope many of you are familiar with this public realm, but just some highlights. Of course, the Harbor Walk, which is 100% complete. We have the lookout pavilion at the northwest part of the site. Also the fire pit and the tidal pool, which are all shown in the pictures here. All of the public realm is certainly actively and attentively managed. And to note here too, shown on the blue dash box, we'll be completing the public realm as part of this project, or with this project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Skip Burke, our landscape architect, to speak to existing conditions and our landscape approach with this site. Skip?
Sure, Lydia, just quickly, when you mentioned the fire pit, it brought back memories from several years ago. And I know that there was an issue with signage over there. I assume all the signage is all set.
Yes, I believe. I'm not familiar with that issue, but I believe it's appropriately, signage is appropriate over there. But I'd be happy to follow up with others in my office who are probably familiar with that.
Yeah, maybe if you could ask the question. I'm pretty sure that it was all resolved. This came up like probably 3 years ago, maybe a couple of years after the original LOI came through. But I remember it had something to do with a fire pit, which makes me smile for some reason. I'm not sure why. So anyways, I guess off the landscape architect.
Great.
Next image, please. So on the left is what Lydia was describing, 3 layers of parking. Underneath this, you can see the building grid and the outline of the building, the rectangle going north and south. And right now, we have 3,660 square feet of green on the top there. It's really eroded lawn. There are 0 trees on site. And then over on the right is the proposed plan, where we have about 6,240 square feet of landscape proposed, and 36 trees as well. You can go to the next image. So this is a slightly distorted, stretched east and west planting plan. Sorry about that. But all of the plants, in fact, I've been working with Kate Kennan on this. And so all of the plants can be found either in the vascular plants of Massachusetts or the USDA plant database. The trees, smaller trees, are just to the left of the building in that first planter. And we have Amelanchier laevis, Carpinus caroliniana, Magnolia virginiana, And then the rest of the trees are larger canopy trees, including Nyssa sylvatica, black gum, American hot hornbeam, swamp white oak, scarlet oak, and Princeton elm as well. The kinds of shrubs that we're proposing are red twig and yellow twig dogwood, which exists on the west side of the public green. Now they've been there for about 12 years and provide a lot of color through the winter. We also have proposed sweet fern, inkberry for some winter evergreen color, and meadowsweet, which is a spirea. And then in addition to that, there is a large mix of grasses, forbs, and evergreen and deciduous ferns. The landscape will be guaranteed for 2 years, and the contractor that installs it will provide maintenance for the first 2 years of that, after which it's turned over to the management company that's been managing the rest of the landscape here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Yes, thank you, Skip. Next slide, please. So this is just to let you know why we're here before you. We're in a land subject to coastal storm flowage, which has a couple different flood zones in it. It's you have the AE zone, which is 17.46 Boston City base, the AE. Then a second AE zone that's a foot lower at 1646. You also have the VE zone that's right along the edge of the seawall. And then we have the city's local ordinances, the 25-foot waterfront area and the 100-foot waterfront area. There is a small section of site that is in the zone X, which is outside the coastal storm flowage, which is towards the front of the building. But generally, a majority of the site is within your jurisdiction. And that being said, I'd like to move to the next slide. And I don't know if Joe has joined us on the call, and if he hasn't, I can speak to this. So this is to show you how the project is prepared for resiliency. We have a Northern Ave elevation is about 17.8, and we have our transformers and switch gear are at elevation 21.5, which is 4 feet above the FEMA BE, which is above per the BPDA's requirement and recommendations. The lobby is also at elevation 21.5. The retail, which is at grade, is 1791. But people will enter the building and then through escalators or stairs, they will raise up to the higher elevations. You can see the existing 3-level garage below the building, which was constructed in 2017. And is the site will be completely encased in an aqua fence. Fallon Company has been using the aqua fence for the past several years for all of their buildings. And they have a deployable system that they actually break out and they once a year, and they train themselves on how to deploy it. And that's the so should there be a storm event here, the aqua fence will be deployed in preparation of a flooding event. And I guess the next slide, please.
Yeah, back to me.
Yes.
Back to Skip. So this is a somewhat edited template that we use for all of our harborfront projects. After Superstorm Sandy in 2012, a group of people, landscape contractors, landscape architects, that had projects that were seriously affected by that storm, got together, put on a really interesting seminar and went through all of these different aspects of waterfront open space design. And we've been adhering to this and expanding it where we can, but I'm not going to go through every line here, every bullet item, but just a few of them. Obviously, plant species selected for tolerance of marine environment. ensuring that that planting could survive would be an automatic irrigation system, so that the landscape could be rinsed with fresh water if it's been inundated with salt water. Electrical was interesting. It was the highest cost damaged element in Superstorm Sandy. And we use these IP68 rated light fixtures, which are submergible for a period of time. And we've learned to ask for custom electrical splices, very long rat tails eliminating from the fixtures, so that we're trying to keep these splices outside of areas that might be inundated. The third bullet is quite obvious, I think, as John Schmidt went over that. Furnishings, we're using 316 marine stainless steel for everything. And very interesting, handrails, site railings designed to be open so that if there's a storm or tidal surge with water going back and forth, those elements don't serve as a catch of that and are damaged because of the action on them. And then lastly,
If I'm sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, I hate to break in. Could you explain that again, please? I think I missed something there about the, I think you said the open railings. How does that work?
yes, yeah, right. They found that where they had guardrails with openings of 4-inch and so on up against the harbor edge, that they would often be ripped off of the decking and all, because they serve to catch furnishings and all kinds of things inboarded them. And when the tidal wash was going back and forth, it just overwhelmed the structural integrity of those elements.
Oh, I get it. I thought maybe the site railings were the prevention for
No.
floating. No, I
Exactly
get
the
it.
opposite. Yeah.
The opposite, yeah. They're
Yeah.
the damage component.
Right.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And then lastly, and I think this is really important, but everywhere we can, especially in the parks that we designed a couple of years ago to the northwest on the Harbor Walk and all, we've been using seat walls that are elevating the landscape, the lawns and the plantings above Harbor Walk to further ensure that they can survive, these, king tides that are associated with storms and things like that. And so that's been very successful, and we're certainly doing it on Fan Pier Parcel H. And with that, I think I go back to John.
Thank you. So next slide, please. So as indicated, this foundation it was built and capped in 2017, and at that time, the water and fire and sewer services were installed and capped as well. So those are already connected to the foundation. New construction will be the additional of electrical feed from Northern Ave that you can see at the bottom of the screen, but primarily for stormwater management. We are providing a stormwater recharge system, below grade perforated pipe recharge system that will be placed along the building foundation that will collect in excess of the 1.25 inch rainfall event from the site as well as the building. And actually we are collecting and storing in about 2,100 cubic feet more than what is BPDA BWSC requirements. This plan has been submitted to Water and Sewer for one round of comments, and we made the second submission for review and comment at the end of last week. So it's currently being vetted by Boston Water and Sewer. Next slide, please. For erosion control, we will be putting a construction fence around the entire site, and hay bale, silt fence, as well as swaddles and protections at the inlet structures. And then we'll have we'll also have the tracking so we don't drag debris off site. Next slide, please. And this is where we speak to the construction management plan. We submitted a full construction management plan with this submission. I just pulled out one slide to give you the general idea of how this will operate. There'll be a crane set up on site. Trucks will enter from the north and come through the site and drop off materials and leave. Turner Construction will be performing this work, and they've done all the work on all the buildings to date out of Fan Pier, so they know, they're very familiar with the area, they're very familiar with the site and the city's requirements and expectations. Also, there was a question, I'm anticipating questions that may come from the commission, is how are we prepared for storm events or flooding conditions? And I'd like to state that the project will monitor weather forecasts, and if a significant storm or flooding is anticipated, the mobile equipment and unconsolidated materials will be removed from the area as described in your condition 82 of your draft conditions. Materials will also be tied down that cannot be removed. Any stockpiles will be covered and secured per your condition 44. And if the site allows itself, it will be, the deployable aqua fence will be installed certainly around the existing buildings and potentially around this site, depending on where we are in construction, should a storm event occur. And we also understand that there's been some inquiry about the orange sales trailer that you see at the top left corner of the site. There's an existing trailer there now that has been serving as a construction management office for the past number of years for the development of the parcel, of the various parcels on site. So the utility services that serve that below grade water and sewer will be connected to this new sales office, which I believe will be built on grade without any deep foundations, and will serve as a sales office, wood construction, until said building allows the sales office to move inside the building. It's a completely temporary condition for use for the duration of construction for sales purposes. And next slide, please. I think that ends our presentation, and we're available for questions.
Fantastic, thank you. I just realized I saw this also last night at BCDC. I'm well prepared tonight for our hearings. Couple quick, I guess, observations or question. John, I think this is a question for you. The transformers, did you get, was it Travis or BPDA, Smart Utilities, sign off on the transformer elevations?
Yes, I understand that the project is compliant with Article 25. And Lydia, if I misspeak, please speak in up, because I wasn't part of those conversations.
Yes, that's correct. Fully compliant with Article 25A.
25A.
Fantastic, thank you. The aqua fence, I do remember, I think it was Mr. Martini maybe, invited us out for a display of the aqua fence one year, and I went. It's actually pretty impressive to watch. I hope that invitation is still out for other commission members who want to see that in action. It's informative to see. With that, just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9, *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag ConcomHearing. Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I don't have a direct question on the building, but with the aqua fence, that's to protect that building, correct? That's all it's meant to do?
Right, it's deployed around the exterior of the building, several feet off the building, and protects the building and its entrances from storm flowage.
All right, so I guess the question to Lydia would be, has Climate Ready Boston worked with your group and any groups down further to figure out future permanent barriers, so we're not running around putting out aqua fences?
Yeah, so we've worked with the city, as we said, on Article 25A compliance for the building, which is not, we don't have permanent barriers, we're just raising elevations. The aqua fence that is to be deployed here is already on site and actually integrates with the neighboring building. So that's our kind of temporary solution here, and then again the permanent solution is the Article 25A compliance. I think we'd be happy to participate in other conversations about, district-wide solutions and all the rest, but haven't had those conversations, with the Climate Ready team.
That's what I was wondering, if they had done that yet. No problem. That's all I had.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think Lydia, Commissioner Sullivan is getting to the question also that what you're doing is not going to preclude any climate ready Boston measures for that area, but I can't imagine a deployable fence would do that. But to be more specific, have you talked to the climate ready team about what they envision for the area?
I don't believe we have, no. And again, we'd be happy to, so we can look into that.
Yeah, again, for your own edification and education, probably be good to know what's going on there. Okay, Commissioner Long.
I'm looking at this landscaping plan. It's, you know, it's really striking in a good way. I'm wondering about mitigating or preventing foot traffic or dog traffic on the north bed. And I'm kind of curious, how tall are the granite and steel planter walls, Skip?
Yeah, they are seat height, so let's say they're approximately 18 inches high, and everything, even the diagonal paths that kind of slash through those areas are that same height, and we haven't had any problems where we've employed the same starting about 12 or 13 years ago on the west side of the public green with the first building that was built. And in addition, the Fallon Company has been maintaining the entire Fan Pier project area in a very conscientious way. And but no, we've been working there, my firm, for 12 or 13 years now, and there've never been any issues with people jumping up on top of walls or anything like that going through planting beds.
Got it. And do you have any dog parks or dog runs at other places in this public realm?
No, I don't believe we do, and it's very interesting. There's one that exists in that area right now off of Harbor Walk. And if you're there early morning when transportation ferry comes in, and there are people all over Harbor Walk going to work, things like that, there are a lot of dogs. It's really quite interesting.
I'm thinking about and maybe you have this already, but just signage to encourage people to follow the leash laws, especially with some of the sensitive plants, sensitive to trampling, even from dogs, like foam flower. Even the snake root, which is toxic. I'm just, as somebody who works outside and encounters lots of dogs, just want to make sure we have our bases covered there. But I love this plan you put together. I think it looks great. Love Piers Park, and just don't want to see it get trampled or pooped on by dogs. That's pretty much my piece there.
Well, thank you, Nick. And yeah, it's a good heads up to take a look at any potential toxicity with the plants that are directly adjacent to that.
Yep.
We'll do that.
That's it. Thank you, Skip.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, how many times has the garage flooded since it was finished in 2016?
To my knowledge, I believe it's never flooded, and we've never had to deploy the aqua fence.
And does anybody have an idea why that's true?
Fortunately, I don't think we've had storm surge flooding events that have impacted the garage and made it to the garage entry. So yeah, there's been no resulting flooding in the garage.
So, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Richard Martini wasn't available tonight. We had this conversation on a team call yesterday, anticipating some inquiries. And Richard says he's been with the project since the beginning, that he's aware of only one instance when the water elevation rise just several inches at one corner of the site. But other than that, the site has been completely dry since it began.
So that area, I mean, there has been flooding and in that area. Is it a result of the way it was constructed? I mean, it's not, is there a reason why it hasn't flooded?
You know,
The flooding that John mentioned that happened near what we're calling the tidal pool, Fan Pier Park. The elevations in that area, top of the historic seawall, are quite a bit lower than what we're talking about. They're around 15.3 or so. And as John mentioned, our elevations, in fact, going up Harbor Walk towards the ICA, we're 18 and a quarter, I think. And so we're rising in elevation as we're moving.
and
What's the garage? I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody.
the garage entrance, I don't have that right in front of me. I can find that out momentarily.
I can tell you,
Okay,
17.9.
17.9, okay.
Yeah.
Right, that was 17.9, and the existing floodplain elevation there is 17 and a half or 16 and a half in the elevation 11 zone. So the 100-year floodplain, that elevation is 17.46. The entrance is half a foot above that at 17.9.
Yeah, okay, so, and is that someplace, that garage entrance, where you would expect to be putting this, this fence?
The fence would go in front of the garage as well as around the entire building. Also, I think the seawall in the front there is a little bit higher. That may mitigate some of the flooding conditions. It have to overtop the seawall before it reaches the site.
I mean, I appreciate that you guys, are answering the questions that you certainly were expecting people to be asking. And I'm appreciative of the work that you've done. But to me, a half a foot at this point, not much. And it's likely to be exceeded. And, a flood into that garage, presumably, is a real disaster. So I'm going to be interested as well in how you come back and report on your conversations with Climate Ready Boston. And in the meantime, I'm assuming, has that particular fence, your aqua fence, has that ever been deployed anywhere?
No, it's not been deployed. I think as we might have mentioned, it's, we practice with it each year, but, and as Michael suggested, we're happy to have commissioners out and see how that's deployed. But yeah, we've never had to deploy it for an actual flooding event.
And has it ever been used anywhere to your knowledge?
Is on other sites, you're saying, in an actual event?
Somewhere where at least it showed that it worked.
Yeah,
I imagine it has, but certainly, tested as a product, but I'm not certain. So I can look into that and confirm.
Yeah, Commissioner Richmond, it is a proven technology. It's been used.
And as it worked?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. If you saw it, you would understand why it's.
And I don't know if it's clear that the garage entrance that we're speaking to was constructed and has been in operations for the past 5 years.
Yeah, no, I got that, but
Okay.
I'm not, the floodplains that we're talking about and using, I think we all understand, are at this point a little bit speculative, and maybe to think about there will be seawater rise above those 100-year floodplains, pretty likely. So anyway, thank you for your answers. It's interesting, and I hope that Climate Ready Boston has a good solution.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Yes, I'm not able to tell from the plans. Can you tell me what work, if any, is happening in the VE zone?
The V. Yeah. Just probably the top, the 5 closest feet towards the water of the park area. I'm comparing plans from my resource area in the landscape plan.
Uh-huh. Hey, I mean, I'll just note, as far as I can tell, you put the flood zones on all the current conditions and not on your proposed conditions, so it's very hard to tell for me anyway, unless I'm missing something. What's in the V zone? So
Yeah,
some of the
it's-
vegetation?
It's some some public trees, some vegetation. You know, Skip, it's the stuff that's closest to the water, near the seawall, probably 5 or 10 feet of that.
And what about the temporary building,
The temporary building,
your sales building?
yeah, the temporary building will be in the VE zone, yes.
So I don't think we have any information on that, but will that be compliant?
Yeah, I mean, it's a temporary building. It will be on blocks. There'll be so water will be able to flow under it. It's gonna be, it's gonna be there for duration of the construction.
So does its temporary nature mean it doesn't have to
No,
apply?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying.
Was a real question. Is there something that? Does it not have to apply?
To be honest with you, I wasn't aware of the temporary sales office issue until several hours ago, because we were focused on the end condition and not necessarily the construction management plan, which is where this is being developed.
Okay, so.
But what I would ask the commission to consider is when if you were to close it and vote on it tonight, when we submit the construction documents, we will give you vetted drawings of the sales center to demonstrate that it is compliant with your regulations.
I think I'll let other commissioners speak to that, but a building in a V zone without any
Or
drawings
possibly
seems a bit much for.
Sure.
Tell us
or
later.
Perhaps we can move it out of the V zone. That might be an option too.
I mean, you're putting a building there for a while. I think we need to see what it's going to be.
Yeah, and I will note, and I think John mentioned this when he touched on the sales structure in his original overview. There is a very similar type structure there today, a trailer, which has public restrooms and the services that are going to be or service that trailer today are going to be moved to this temporary sales structure. So just a bit of background there.
Interesting. Those are the public restrooms that are over there?
Yes. Yep.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that. Did you say you could move it out of the VE zone?
I can't speak for Lydia, but is it possible to reduce that size and to pull it out of the VE zone and shift it a few feet?
We can certainly look at it. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's that, we're talking, a couple feet. Am I understanding that right, John?
I would say, looking at the drawing, I think the VE zone falls through the center of that structure.
Okay.
So in the future, your plan should show where the zones are on the work you're proposing, not just on existing conditions. And it seems to me this is a little bit of a loose end that was problematic. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Elena, anybody from the public?
No, nobody from the public. We don't have any hands raised at the moment, and we also haven't received any emails regarding this project.
Okay, so unfortunately, it seems like we have a loose end here on the building. Unless you have any feedback now that it could be moved out of the VE zone, I think we need to continue this and then focus on that issue.
And Michael,
go ahead.
Sorry, I had a quick note just from staff based on the presentation tonight. Would it be okay for me to clarify a few notes?
Yeah, of course. Please.
Great.
Do.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify for the record. I know that earlier somebody mentioned a 100-foot waterfront area, and I just wanted to clarify for the record. Did you mean either the 100-foot buffer zone or the 25-foot waterfront area?
I'm sorry, it's 20, it was the 100-foot buffer zone.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that for the record. And then the other note that we had was that also just wanted to emphasize the importance of just incorporating climate resilience into this, ensuring that it's going to make sense in future coastal resilience infrastructure. So a lot of just echoing a lot of what the commission has already spoken to.
And Commissioner Parker, Chair Parker, could we ask that if they're going to come back anyway, that they could address the issue that Commissioner Sullivan raised about the sewers?
Was that the last hearing or this hearing?
Yeah, I thought it was.
I think it was the hearing where the manholes were too close to each other.
Yeah, that was the
Was
prior
it-
hearing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I
Okay.
think here the homework is, let's dig in a little bit on the temporary structure. And Lydia, if you can dig something up or talk to the Climate Ready Boston team, I think that's what we would focus on when you come back. Does that make sense?
Great. Yes, sounds like
Fair
a plan. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Second. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye, 5-0. Okay, great. See you in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for, okay, I'm sorry, just got a DP file number. Notice of intent for DP file number 0061940 and Boston file number 2023-029 from Epsilon Associates on behalf of SBMMP LLC for proposed soil borings and sediment samples collected from 3 Dolphin Way and 20 Fid Kennedy Avenue, South Boston. Resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, designated port area, land under ocean, coastal bank, 100-foot buffer zone to coastal bank and waterfront area. We're going to be seeing Eric again here.
Hello again, Chairman Parker, Eric Rexford, Epsilon Associates, here on behalf of South Boston Marine Multi-Port LLC. Also joining me is Ryan Ganyabin, the applicant's representative this evening. I also see Brad Washburn from Massport and Connor LeBlanc, his colleague, and I believe William Eppinger from EDIC is on as well. Project site is located at 20 Fid Kennedy Avenue, which is shown in the yellow outline here. It comprises a few different parcels, one of which is EDIC's parcel M. That is the blue roofed building at the bottom right of the project site, what I call the Subaru building. The rest of the project site is known as the Massport Marine Terminal, so named because EDIC and Massport have entered into a long-term ground lease whereby Massport maintains and operates the marine terminal. It's the project site's a little more than 16 acres. It's primarily filled tidelands, although the marine terminal does include what's called the North Jetty. That's the long rectangular feature abutting Boston Harbor. It's sort of light gray in color in the aerial image. That is a pile supported structure. By way of background, the applicant intends to rehabilitate and reposition the project site as a multi-port marine terminal to accommodate the transshipment of bulk, break bulk, and project cargo. That rehabilitation project will be the subject of a future notice of intent. For the purpose of this notice of intent, we're respectfully requesting an order of conditions to implement a subsurface geotech and sediment sampling program. Next slide, please, Elena. I have a few images just to help orient people to the project site. This photo is taken from, I think that's called Seafood Way, looking easterly back towards the project site. This is one segment of the project shoreline that's constructed of riprap. In the background, you can see a vertical sheet pile bulkhead. That bulkhead continues around the rest of the project site. Also in this image to the left, you can see the pile supported north jetty outboard of the sheet pile bulkhead. Next slide, please. This image is taken in front of the Subaru building, looking in an easterly direction. If it wasn't so darn foggy, you'd see Logan in the background, but it's an image of the north jetty. That's the concrete deck of the pile supported structure. In this photo, I'm standing behind the sheet pile bulkhead. That transition from concrete to asphalt is the approximate location of the sheet pile bulkhead. Next slide, please. This is taken from the middle of the site looking south back towards Fid Kennedy. The entire site's asphalt impervious surface, albeit not in terrific condition. The two other structures on site are shown in the image. Is a gray building behind the bus and that tannish color building. On the right, the large gray building you see in the background is the Canestraro facility offsite south of Fid Kennedy Avenue. At the time, I guess I'd characterize existing site uses as intermittent and temporary. Vehicle and equipment, material storage happens from time to time. For example, I believe the cruise port uses portion of the site for overflow parking during cruise season. And I believe the state police keep some vehicles and equipment in that gray building in the image, but there's no long-standing established use of the site at this time. Next slide, please. Nearly the entire site's located within land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's entirely within the South Boston designated port area as well. Next slide, please. Additional resource areas on the project site are shown here. The top of Coastal Bank is depicted by that orange line. So you can see it at the top of that riprap slope, which transitions into that sheet pile bulkhead that continues all the way around the site. Again, the north jetty is pile supported over flow tide lands, land under the ocean. The 25-foot waterfront area under the ordinance is depicted by the blue line, and the 100-foot buffer zone to Coastal Bank is the green line. The work we're requesting an order of conditions for consists of two components. One is the upland geotech borings to evaluate subsurface conditions for design and planning of engineering. At this time, we're proposing 23 positions for those borings. They're represented by the red circles. These will be 2 to 4 inch borings that will advance anywhere from 5 to 60 feet below grade. We anticipate that each boring position can be completed in a day. They might be able to do more than one position in a day, but all that's to say that the boring will be advanced, backfilled, and capped in a day. There will be no stockpiling of material. The borings will be backfilled with the cutting material. As some of the deeper borings may be grouted and filled with the cuttings. Anything that can't be returned to the borehole will be, including the cuttings and drill fluid, would be put into a barrel container and removed off site for disposal at an approved facility. As part of the rehabilitation of the site, we anticipate that some dredging in the area of the North Jetty will be required to accommodate the vessels we anticipate will be berthing at the facility. So we are proposing a soil sampling, sediment sampling program. At this time, there are 23 sediment sampling positions. Those are shown by the blue dots in just north of the North Jetty. In this case, these are 4-inch borings that'll be advanced by VibraCore. the sediment will be, that will be done from a vessel, a barge or a workboat. Sediment will be returned to the vessel and taken off site for chemical and grain size analysis. And with that, I think I'll turn it back over to the commission if you have any questions or comments.
Great, thank you. I don't. I just wanted, Brad, I just want to acknowledge that you have submitted the obligatory Massport letter that refuses to recognize our authority over Massport, but does acknowledge our existence because he is performing an essential government service. So thank you for appearing to keep us in the loop. With that, Elena, do you have anything on this?
No, not on this.
Okay. Before I go to the commissioners, just remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag #ConComHearing. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I don't have any questions on the boring, but I do have a question. With all the great planning you seem to be doing for your future, have you dealt with Climate Ready Boston? Trying to plan how to keep the water out of our city?
Yeah, specific to this site, it's tricky. The anticipated use is maritime industrial. So that ship to shore transfer of materials typically makes the type of interventions that Climate Ready Boston contemplates difficult. We are evaluating elevating portions of the site and other means of improving resiliency at this site, though. We'll certainly provide additional information in the notice of intent for the rehabilitation project.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long.
No questions, but I think with your future NOI, we'll be thinking more about the land under ocean and any benthic organisms there. So just to put that in your brain right now, Eric, but that's all.
Yes, thank you. I'll note the dredge work will be subject to a water quality certification from Mass DEP and other permitting. So certainly we'll have much more information after we get these lab results back and go through that water quality process.
Thank you.
Yep. Army Corps as well, right, Eric?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Richmond.
Yeah, I was just curious. Is this an area that's ever had any borings before? I mean, do you have any idea what you're looking for or what's there?
I'm almost certain it has. I don't have any of those data. This area was most recently filled as part of the Central Artery Tunnel project. So late 90s and earlier, there was some fill placed there. I'd imagine there was a fair amount of geotech analysis that went into that effort. Unfortunately, I have not seen any of that.
Okay, and so you don't you don't have any idea whether there's bad stuff there as well as, sort of just to see how far down you have to go.
There's always the possibility that urban fill contains materials that are undesirable.
Yeah.
And that's, we'll certainly understand more about those conditions when this geotech program moves forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Elena, any raised hands?
I see no raised hands, and we also have not received any emails or other forms of communication about this.
Any clarifications for the record?
No clarifications, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That passes 5-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Last item for our public hearings is a request for an extension to the original order of conditions for DEP file number 0061735 for the proposed construction of a mixed-use building and associated sidewalk improvements located at 55 India Street, downtown Boston. Do we even have a presentation for this, or Ellen, are you gonna? Who's handling this?
We don't have any additional materials in a presentation form. And I think I'm not seeing any folks here.
Yeah,
I'm Scott Thompson here I'm the
Oh,
architect.
Hi,
from
apologies,
Hessing
Scott.
Architects. So I'm
Perfect.
here, and the proponent Curtis Kemeny will be joining shortly. We didn't think we'd jump this far ahead in the agenda right to this point, but he's joining now, so I can answer questions.
Okay. So who'd like to give us just a very quick overview of the extension and why you need it? I don't expect this will take more than a couple minutes.
I think we have our project was first came before you in 2020, and we were moving along through the process. And of course, COVID hit at that point. We were still trying to get through the entitlement process, but at that time we did have to put the project on hold. And then there was, the subsequent year and a half of sort of market dislocations and us trying to get back up to speed. So basically, it's really the delay of COVID and the market issues with the project.
No changes to the program then.
No.
Everything being done in accordance with the previously issued OOC. Okay.
Yep.
If that is the case, then I guess I have to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6. Unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag ConcomHearing. Elena, do you have anything on this?
I don't have anything on this.
Yeah. Commissioner Sullivan,
No questions.
Commissioner Long,
No questions.
Commissioner Richmond,
No questions.
Commissioner Herbst.
Not for me either.
Yep. Same here. Elena, any raised hands?
No raised hands and no emails either.
Okay. Perfect. So with that, I would entertain a motion to extend. And how long are we extending for? What can we extend for? I'm sorry, I always forget this. Is it 6 months, 3 years?
3 years.
3 years.
Okay. I entertain a motion to extend this order of conditions for 3 years.
So moved.
With a second.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. There's also been a number of continuances continued to the May 3rd hearing. Notice of intent for DEP file number 0061772 in Boston file number 2010-010. Notice of intent for DEP file number 0061704 in Boston file number 2020-007. Notice of intent for DEP file number 0061829 in Boston file number 2021-045. Notice of intent for DEP file number 0061930 and Boston file number 2023-024. Continued also has been a request for determination of applicability regarding the properties located at 2 Starling and Willett Street in West Roxbury. And in addition, the continuances that I mentioned at the top of the meeting. The commission will now begin its regular.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The very first continuance you mentioned was continued to the May 3rd hearing. So that's this one. So that must not be correct.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Okay, we're now begin our regular meeting. And we have, I think, Eleanor, we're going to start this off. We have some guests from EPA to talk to us about the Lewis Chemical Superfund site.
We do, yes. So yeah, let's start with them. So I'd like to introduce Tom Hatsopoulos and Kate Mellinson. They're gonna talk to us a little bit about what's going on at Lewis Chemical site and also answer any questions that y'all might have.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thanks for having us. So
Sure. I was just going to say, I assume you'll be able to, not that this is not important, but 10, 15 minutes here.
I think that's what we're thinking. So I'm Kate Melanson. I'm with our government relations team at EPA, and Tom Hatsopoulos, who's an on-scene coordinator with EPA and overseeing the work that's being done at the Lewis Chemical Site, I think is on by phone. I don't know, Tom, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Is he the 323?
I think that's him. Yeah. Does he have to hit, what is it, star something to?
Yeah, *9 and then *6. I only say it 100 times every meeting, and I *9 and then *6. Unmute yourself, Tom.
So
Come on, he's a manager. He's got to be able to figure this out.
Oh, he has his hand raised. Are you able to unmute him from where you are?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Oh, I think, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. Oh, he
He's
got
on.
it, and then he's muted again. But so he's going to give a quick overview of the project and the work that EPA is doing down there, and then be able to answer questions. I think he has 5 minutes of a presentation, and then he'll answer questions for you. Tom, are you able to?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, great.
Yes.
So you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for inviting me to this meeting. So a little about me. I grew up in Boston. Actually went to the old Boston Technical High School, which is a short distance from the site, and did my undergraduate and graduate studies at Northeastern. So I know the area very, very well. I've been with EPA for 32 years now, and I've actually been conducting hazardous waste cleanups for the last 30 years or so, all over New England. So this is not my first rodeo, guys. Probably the last one before I retire. So I'm very proud to end my career in the city I grew up in. Let me give you my telephone number just in case you guys don't have it, in case you guys ever need to ask a question. It's 617-620-2323. 617-620-2323. And feel free to call me with any questions any time of the week, 7 days a week. So we currently are working on 2 sites in Hyde Park. The first one is the Lewis Chemical Site, and that's a current removal action. And the other one is a site investigation. It's the Riverside Square site, which is about a half a mile away. The main contaminant of concern is PCBs in the soils, and also with volatile organic contaminants and some metals at the Lewis site. The Riverside site is strictly PCBs. Like I said, they're both located within a half mile of each other, and both sites are zoned residential/commercial, and they are environmental justice areas. So the Lewis chemical removal action, I'll start with that first. It's a one, I don't know if you guys know exactly
Tom?
where the site's located.
Tom?
Yes.
Can I
Yes.
ask you a question? Unfortunately for you, I was Superfund Enforcement Counsel at EPA back in the early 2000s.
Oh, okay.
So I have just a clarification for my fellow commissioners, the difference between a removal and a remediation action.
Okay. Oh, the removal action under my program, we go in, actually in my branch, it's usually a 1 year to 2 year action, which basically we remove the direct contact threat or the threat to the environment or public health. Remediation is usually a long-term project like the NPL sites, National Priority List Superfund sites, which take tremendously long time to actually remediate. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to make sure they understood the distinction between removal to address immediate concerns as opposed to a long-term remediation.
Yes, absolutely. So the Lewis Chemical Site, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's a 1 acre vacant lot which abuts the Fairmont MBTA train station on the Neponset River. It was in operation from 1963 to 1983, where it collected and transported, stored, processed hazardous waste. Fire happened sometime in the 80s, and the facility was raised in 2013 by the city. The site is approximately owned, 2/3 of it is owned by the city of Boston, and the rest is owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. However, it's managed by DCRs and as environmental preservation land. The PCBs on the site range up to 15,500 parts per million. That's in the soils. And as a reference, the MCP cleanup standards for residential property are 1 part per million. So we've got PCBs that are 15,000 parts per million, and the cleanup standard is 1. So when the site was actually given to me, I reviewed the historical data, which was conducted by city and DCR consultants, environmental consultants. And I saw that, the PCBs and the other materials, the hazardous waste on the site, they pose a threat to public and the environment. So I requested and got funding from our director, $3.9 million to actually start the removal action at the site, with the goal of eliminating the direct contact threat by removing the source, basically removing the PCBs and whatever else is co-located within the soils. I initiated the removal action in mid-April, and I believe it will take around 7 to 8 months to complete. At this point, we're up in the setting up stage. Basically, what we're doing is clearing the entire site of all the trees and other wild vegetation that was there, taking down the fences that go right along the river on the boundary of the river and the site. And we've also brought in work trailers, personnel, and other equipment. By the end of the removal, we should have removed approximately 5,000 cubic yards of soil. And we're basically bringing in the exact same amount of soil in to bring it back up to basically bring the ground up to the level that it was before. That will mean it will take about 400 trucks, just 200 hazardous waste trucks will go in and out of the site. And actually, no, about 400 trucks will enter the site. 200 will be hazardous waste, 200 will go out as hazardous waste. And then 200 in and 200 out from soil. So altogether, it will be about 800 trucks on the road when you really think about it, They will be on Fairmount Avenue and Truman Parkway and through Milton to 93. This process will probably take around 2.5 months to do the transportation and disposal and the bringing in of the clean soil. And because of the large volume of trucks needed, I'm in contact with Boston Police Department, the Boston City Traffic Department, come up with a traffic plan. So for all the trucking activities, whether it be hazardous waste or clean soil into the site. With regard to the excavation and staging activities prior to the disposal, all excavation, staging, loading, and anything that has to do with disposal will be done, we'll be using water as an engineering control to ensure that no dust or any kind of hazardous material can migrate via air to outside of the site. All excavated soil will be staged for disposal on the site, and it will be covered with polyethylene cover at all non-working hours. To safeguard the riverway from any debris while we're excavating the banks of the site, I'm looking to installing a silt boom or what's called a silt curtain. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's yellow boom, hard boom that goes into the water, and that will trap or collect anything that comes off our excavation, and then we'll basically bring it back into land again. Regarding the MBTA riders, I've contacted and met with the MBTA Director of Engineering and went over my plan, the truck activities and things like this, and what kind of personnel we'll be using to bring the truck in and out of the site, because it's a very sharp turn there, come into a site, and it goes right in front of the exit of the train station, Fairmont train station, where actually riders go in and out of the what's it called, the area where the passengers enter the train. The hours of operation will be 7 to 5:30, 4 days a week during duration of the removal action. So that's pretty much with the pretty much it with the Lewis Chemical site. I can talk a little bit about the Riverside Square, which is a half a mile away. And this site is around 3.5 acres and encompasses 14 private residential properties and also land owned by the DCR. This other property that I'm talking, this other site, again, abuts the river, the Neponset River. We've identified the property owners. We received access agreements to conduct a site investigation and hired a land surveyor to delineate all of the property boundaries, so we know which property we're sampling, and then we can, talk about the sample results and things like this. This week we began the site investigation, which is an extensive soil sampling investigation on the entire site, and it will take approximately 4 weeks to complete. Approximately 550 samples will be collected from the entire site, every 25 feet down to 3 feet. So one sample at 1 foot and the other sample from 2 to 3 feet. That's pretty much it. You guys have any questions? I don't want to take a lot of your time.
Sure. Tom, thank you so much. This is really informative. I do have a quick question for you, and I don't think it's applicable to removal actions, but I don't quite remember. As far as local regulations, ARARs, have you gone through that analysis, or is that solely applicable to remediations? And the reason I'm asking the question,
No, we abide
we
by
may have
the state.
We're along there, so
We abide by we follow the state ARARs. We try to meet them, but we have our own ARARs. Now with the PCBs here, I will try to get them down to. I will try to get close. Of course, I have almost $4 million to spend on the site, and if I need to ask for more, I'm sure that the director will probably give more funding to the site. But I will try to meet the one. If we can't meet the one, 1 part per million, I don't know how it's going to end up. But at all my sites, I've always met the state ARAR or try to meet it.
Okay, fantastic. And if you don't get down to the 1 part per million, or even if you do get down to the 1 part per million, will there be restrictions, whether it be on fishing or human contact? It would be obvious.
That I don't know. We have our PCB coordinator, Kate Woodward, will have to make that decision afterwards. She'll write a letter to, she'll get together with the state and try to figure out the reuse of this, or what's going to happen after my program gets out.
Okay.
Whether it will be an environmental deed restriction on the property or what, I don't know. I don't get involved with that. I'm basically the engineer doing the removal action.
Fantastic. And you did a great job explaining it. Kate didn't have to jump in and walk
I went a
anything
little
you
bit
said back.
fast, but I figured you guys are tired, and so am I.
Great. Okay. I'll go to the rest of the commissioners now. Commissioner Sullivan, any questions?
No questions.
Great. Commissioner Long?
No questions. Thank you for what you're doing.
Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I have a question. Did you say that you're going to cut down all the trees?
Yeah, that's just wild growth. I've actually discussed that with the DCR, the director of engineering, I think, assistant director of engineering, Robert Lowell. I don't know if you guys know him. And there's no way for us to actually do the cleanup on the bank area without cutting the trees. you know?
And when you say, are they big trees that you're cutting down?
Some are, some are not. They're just wild growth through the years. They weren't planted there by anyone. You know, they're just seeds from birds and things like this. You know, there's nothing specific, you know?
And is there any way that when you're finished, that somebody is going to take responsibility for planting trees again, or that's just not your department?
That's not my department, but if they ask me to put a tree or 2 or 3 or 4, I will gladly do so.
And who's they that would be asking you to do that?
DCR.
Okay, all right. So if we
Yeah.
want that to happen, then supposedly we're going to have to ask DCR.
Yeah, I have no problem, you know, replanting trees in the area, but right now it's nothing. The trees are just wild growth throughout the years, neglected wild growth, and they've grown actually between the bank is riprap. It's got these huge stones that hold back the soil, because the site is elevated. It's not the same level as the river, you know. So it's got huge riprap there, and we can't really do the work. We have to pull out the riprap, which is huge stones, and we can't work around the trees. It's almost impossible to do so with all the roots that are there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll kill them. We'll kill them by, you know, not we'll, as we're digging for the soil, we'll probably kill the trees. So we have to get them out, because we call them widow makers. If you're working underneath, very good chance a branch will fall on you and kill you.
Right.
Yeah.
Get it. Okay. Well, that's very interesting information, and I hope we're going to be able to get somebody to replant some trees there. Thank you very much for what you're doing.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Commissioner Herbst?
No questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Great. Okay. Well, Kate and Tom, thank you so much. You may be homesick for EPA. They're some of the best years of my professional career. And just so happy to see you guys still plugging away at this. So again, thanks for your time this evening, and we'll get you out for the Celtics game.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. First thing in our regular meeting is request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061558 for the Olmsted Green mixed income rental phase project.
And there are no updates on that, so those are actually going to have to be continued again.
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to continue this matter. Oh, we don't have. Wait, we're in regular meeting. So, sorry, it's going to be continued. How about the request for the certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061855 and Boston file number 2022-017? Are we ready for that one?
All of those are continued as well. No updates.
Okay. Administrative updates consisted solely of the EPA briefing.
Oh, and then also 2 more things. So we did an administrative approval of a change in proponent for DEP file number 006-1834 Cypher Street. So the change was from Massachusetts Department of Transportation to the Massachusetts Port Authority. I went through, there's not a, I guess, formal procedure for that. So I got in touch with DEP and asked how they would want us to record that, and went along with what they recommended. So there's just been a change in proponent there. And the other update that I had was the same site visit that I mentioned last hearing, so for Stony Brook. And just if you'd like to attend that before we start to schedule it, if you could just email me by noon on this coming Friday, May 5th, that would be great. And then we can go ahead and start to schedule that.
I think you're looking for people to say yes, aren't you?
It's, well, I mean, as long as we don't have 4 or more people, we should be good. But yeah, so that'll be great.
If Commissioner Herbst is going, I want to go.
Great.
I want to hear more about the flood insurance analysis you did.
All right.
Okay. Okay, is that it?
That's it for admin updates.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we can we accept all the orders of condition en masse?
There shouldn't
Looks
be, I didn't have in my notes that there was any issues with those.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to accept the following orders of conditions for notice of intent for DEP file number 0061927 in Boston file number 2023-017. Notice of intent for DEP file number 0061933 in Boston file number 2023-025. DEP file number 0061935 in Boston file number 2023-023.
Chair Parker, I have to recuse myself from that last one.
Columbia Road?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
No.
reading, I'm sorry, I was reading the wrong
No,
one.
you're right. Boston Parks. No, you absolutely
Okay.
do.
Oh, my
Yeah.
apologies for missing that.
Yeah, that's okay. So I would amend the motion. I'm looking for it to include just the first DEP file numbers on the screen there, 0061927, Boston file number 2023-017, and DEP file number 0061933, and Boston file number 2023-025.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, Commissioner Long will recuse himself for this vote, which is a acceptance of the order of conditions for DEP file number 0061935 and Boston file number 2023-023.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Minutes are not done yet, so we will defer to the next meeting. So with that, I think it's a motion to adjourn by acclamation. Do we have any objections if we close this off?
Not from me.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. We'll see everyone in
Thanks.
a few weeks. Take care. Thanks, Elena.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.